Okay, so for today we're going to be learning. We talk about already how to simplify radicals. So today we're going to be learning how to add and subtract radicals. Now, one thing that we saw some time back in our previous classes, we talk about something like terms, right? That was something that we have discussed before. That's an example. I'm gonna just refresh our mind. So what does like term mean? Let's say I had something like 2x plus 3y plus 4x. Now, in this case, I could only combine those that have the same letter. So I know 2 plus 4 is 6, so we'll call those 6x plus 3y. Remember, that's what we saw some time back. Like I said, we've seen this before, like terms idea. Well, the same thing is going to happen with radicals. I'm going to be able to combine only those terms that have the same radical. Notice when there were letters, when I use x's and y's, when there were letters, notice I did nothing to the x, right? 2x plus 4x, I call it 6x. I did nothing to the letter. Same thing when we have the radicals. When I'm combining my radicals, I'm not going to change my radical. I'm just going to combine the number in front of it, which we usually call in math, we call that coefficient. Okay, so what I'm going to do first, I'm going to simplify all my radicals. So I'm going to simplify my radicals as much as I can. And then I'm going to combine my like terms. As a reminder, what I need when I simplify radicals, I need my perfect squares. So the square root of 4, the square root of 9, the square root of 16, the square root of 25, the square root of 36, 49, 64. I need those. I need to refresh those. So when I look at my first term, let me highlight it with yellow. I'm just focused on this term. My radical 5. Can I simplify that? And what I mean with simplify is my radical. Can I break it into two radicals, two numbers that multiply equals 5, but one of them is from my perfect squares. And in this case, I cannot. So that whole term, it's already simplified. I'm not going to do anything to it. So I'm going to copy the first term as -3 radical 5. So I'm not doing anything to that. Then let me take a look at my second term. So I'm looking at one term at a time. So let me focus on this one. I'm thinking of my radical. Can I simplify my radical? Can I multiply two numbers equals 18, one of them being from my perfect squares? And I'm going to say, yeah, I can go 9 times 2. Right? 9 times 2 is 18. 9 is a perfect square. Before I move on, let me put a 2 right here at the beginning, right? I'm talking about this 2. I was just looking at my radicals to begin with. My radical 18. Can I simplify my radical? Yes. So because I'm going to be able to work, let me copy my 2 at the front. It's a positive 2, right? I see the plus sign. Now I know the square root of 9 becomes 3. Right, the square root of 9 is 3. I multiply my two whole numbers, so 2 times 3, it's a positive 6. So I'm even going to write it with the sign included. So positive 6 radical 2. And then lastly, let me take a look at my last term. This one. I cannot simplify, so let me just copy it right now. Oops, let me change to pen. So -3 radical 2. So notice I simplify my radicals. Then combine your like terms. Combine those that do have the same radical. I see radical 5 and radical 2, so not all of them are the same thing. This is what we're going to do for the homework. For the homework, what we're going to do is we're going to combine starting from the smallest radical. So in this case, radical 2. So I'm comparing the radicals, right? I have radical 2's. I have a radical 5, so I'm going to go with the smallest radical. I combine those terms, positive 6 and a -3. Remember, I'm just looking at the numbers outside of the radical. Positive 6, -3 is a positive 3. So I'm going to call this 3 radical 2, and then minus 3 radical 5. On paper, it really will not matter which one we write first, but because we're typing our work, I didn't want to come with all the possible choices. Like, oh, what did you do? Can I come out with all 1,000 possible ways you can do this? So instead, I decided to go with the smallest radical. So make sure you guys type it correctly. Okay, so now on the radical, right? We talk about the radical sign. We cannot type in the radical sign. So the way I'm going to type this will be 3 rad, and then open and close parentheses inside the parentheses 2. So 3 radical 2 minus 3 radical 5. So rad, open and close parentheses inside the parentheses of 5. So this is how we're going to type our answer. Make sure it's all together. No spaces, nothing, just all together. And please do not add an extra space at the end. That's one thing people have been doing lately. Don't do that because then the homework will mark you incorrect. So just what we have to type all together, no spaces. Remember the smallest radical first. All right, let's take a look at number 26. I'm going to simplify my radicals to begin with. So let me focus on my first radical only, my first term. And then I ask myself, 27, can I break it down into two numbers that multiply equals 27, one of them being a perfect squared? I'm going to say, yeah, 9 times 3. Okay, because I can simplify, let me not forget my negative 3 at the front. Okay, and I know the square root of 9 is 3, so this combines to negative 9 radical 3. Remember, my negative 9, because I multiply my numbers outside, a negative 3 times 3, did nothing to my radical. My radical is already simplified, so I'm just going to leave it at that. Let me take a look at my second term, radical 54. So I'm thinking, all right, can I break it down? Two numbers multiplied equals 54, one of them being a perfect squared. And yes, I can think 9 times 6. Let me not forget my negative sign in front of it. I know the square root of 9 becomes 3. So this is negative 3 radical 6. Now, I know some people can think, well, 6, I can break it as 2 times 3. And yes, I can break it as 2 times 3, but neither the 2 nor the 3 are a perfect square. So remember, in order for me to simplify even more, I ask myself, can I break it down to two numbers that multiplied equals 6, but one of them being a perfect square? I cannot, so that is as simple as we can go. And lastly, let me take a look at my last term. Radical 12, yeah, I can do that as 4 times 3, right? 4 times 3 is 12. 4 is a perfect square. Let me not forget about my negative 2 at the front. I know the square root of 4 is 2. So when I multiply these two numbers, that gives me negative 4 radical 3. Okay, so I simplify my radicals as much as I could. Now, let me combine my like terms. So starting from the lowest radical, the smallest radical, that is radical 3. Let me underline them so we can see what am I looking at. Okay, so radical 3. So all I'm going to ask myself, what's negative 9 minus 4? What's a negative 9 and a negative 4? I see it as a soccer match. The negative scored 9 points and the negative score 4. So that means a negative 1 by 13. Negative 13 radical 3. Right, just negative 9 and a negative 4 gives me a negative 13. And then my other term here is a negative 3 radical 6. I can write this easily. If this was on paper, I could easily write this. But now for our homework, the way I'm going to type this will be negative 13 RAD for radical, open and close parentheses. Inside the parentheses, I'm going to have a 3. So negative 13 radical 3 minus 3 RAD for radical, open and close parentheses. Inside the parentheses, I have a 6. So I have negative 13 radical 3 minus 3 radical 6. And that's it. Let me flip the page on our notes. Let me take a look at questions 27 and 28. Let me flip those. So looking at number 27. My first term. I asked myself, the radical 27, can I simplify that? Can I multiply two radicals? So two different numbers that multiplied equals 27. One of them is a perfect squared. And yeah, I can go 9 times 3. So let me not forget my negative 2 at the front. I know the square root of 9 is 3. So when I multiply these, I get negative 6 radical 3. My second term, 27. Yep, I can break that as 9 times 3. So let me not forget my negative 2 at the front. I know the square root of 9 is 3. So it's going to be negative 6 radical 3. Looking at the last term, I cannot simplify more. So I'm just going to call that negative 3 radical 3. Now, the cool thing on here it is, oops, it seems that they all have the same radical. So I'm going to be able to combine them all into just one term. I'm just looking at the numbers on the outside. Negative 6 with a negative 6, that's a negative 12. Negative 12 with a negative 3, that's a negative 15. So if I was writing this on paper, I can easily just go negative 15 radical 3. For our homework, when we typing it, I'm just going to go negative 15 RAD, close, open and close parentheses, inside the parentheses 3. So negative 15 radical 3. All together, no spaces. All right, my last example here. I will talk about one more example, but the last example we have here, I look at my first term. Nothing I can do, right? Radical 2. Can I break it down into two numbers that multiply equals 2, one of them being a perfect square? No. Okay, so that one's already simplified. Let me leave a space. So let me just copy it here. 2 radical 2. My second term, let me underline it. When I think of 45, can I break this into two radicals? Multiply equals 45, one of them being a perfect squared. I'm going to think of 9 times 5. Let me not forget my negative sign at the front. I know the square root of 9 is 3. So that 3 with the negative sign becomes negative 3 radical 5. And then this last term, nothing I can do. So I'm just going to copy it as negative 3 radical 5. Okay. So the smallest radical is radical 2. I see radical 2, radical 5, radical 5. So the smallest radical is radical 2. So that's the first one. I only have one term with radical 2. So if I was writing this, I can easily go 2 radical 2. Then my other radicals, they have the same radical 5. So I'm going to be able to combine them by combining the numbers outside. So we call this coefficients. Negative 3 and a negative 3, that gives me negative 6. So minus 6 radical 5. Again, on paper, I can easily write it like this. On our homework, I'm going to have 2 radical 2 minus 6 radical 5. All together, no spaces. Now, in your homework, some of your terms are going to simplify to whole numbers, no radicals. Okay, so as an example, so let me make another example here. Let's say I had like 2 radical 3 plus 5 minus 6 radical 2 or radical 3. Let's call that radical 3. So I have like terms. What if I had something like this? I have terms. I see some terms. Let me underline them. I see some terms that have radicals, but some don't have radicals. Well, when I'm combining like terms, let me combine those that don't have a radical first. So 5 minus 4 radical 3. The minus 4 because I combined the 2 and a negative 6. So that gives me a negative 4. So when you have terms that don't have radicals, combine them at the front. Those are the first term. That's the smallest radical. Okay, make sure if you need help, make sure you reach out to me.